Great, welcome to the Forward Edge cybersecurity presentation. I just kind of want to do a shout out to Gallagher for facilitating this. And I kind of want to do a couple of housekeeping notes before we get going. If you have any comments during the webinar, feel free to use the chat area. You can also post questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom webinar. We'll collect these questions and try and address as many possible at the end. If you can't see the slides or have any technical difficulties, close the webinar and rejoin using the link sent to your email. If you're using two monitors, check behind open windows for a second Zoom screen. And also an on-demand version of this entire webinar will be made available via the same link within about 24 hours of the close of the presentation. So with that said, I just want to also a couple comments in terms of what this presentation and how it's designed. Typically, it's kind of designed to be an omnibus presentation or a treatment of our cybersecurity solution, because very often we have superintendents, treasurers, and IT directors attending this. But at any time, if you want a deeper dive for a technology question, feel free to, again, to put it in the Q&A section. And with that said, my name is Denise Caccaberry. I am the cybersecurity solutions specialist here at Forward Edge. And I wanted to introduce my esteemed colleague, William Cerrone. He is our CIO. William, do you want to open up with some comments about who Forward Edge is?
Sure, yeah. As Denise said, I'm William Cerrone. I'm the CIO here at Forward Edge. I've been here for about 11 years now. And prior to that, my background was an IT director in a K12 institution in a suburb here of north of Cincinnati, northeast Cincinnati. So, Forward Edge, we are a technology solutions provider specializing in solutions tailored exclusively to the K12 education market. Our company started as a hardware installation firm in 2005, and we were one of the first companies to bring partner managed services approach to the education sector. About 12 years ago, we spun that practice up. And our managed services practice kind of spawned from the questions and concerns raised by clients who were demanding that the technology be available and sustainable in their organizations. You know, about that time, technology was becoming more and more of a part of the classroom, and teachers needed to be able to rely on it if they were going to integrate it into the curriculum. So that's kind of how we got our start in managed services. And then over time, it became apparent that managed services wasn't always a fit, but even the most well-run infrastructures needed a security-focused overlay, and that's kind of how our cybersecurity practice was formalized. We capitalized on the success that we'd had with over 50 school districts in managed services, and we aligned a solution with the most respected frameworks in security, such as the CIS and the NIST, to bring industry-leading tools to the K-12 market.
And William, who will be responsible when your district is hacked?
Yeah, so this is a question that we were asked several years ago by one of our clients. And it quickly became apparent that that we are. And we, in fact, we had a situation with the very client that asked this. They were a managed services customer at the time. We didn't have a formal cybersecurity solution spun up. Managed services customer. They had a opening for an outside vendor to come into their network to do some third-party consulting on their SQL database. And that hole ended up being exploited by an attacker for, and they deployed ransomware within the district at that point. We were able to deploy a team of not so much cybersecurity experts, but just IT experts from our company to the site. We were able to stop the ransomware, get everything back under control, get the network back up and running in a matter of a couple of hours. So that was a real win for us to be able to respond, but it really made an impact on us, and it became apparent that we were the ones who needed to be able to be responsible when the district got hacked.
Great.
So again, I mentioned partner managed services. We always take a partner approach to any of the solutions that we bring forth to education. We realize that one size doesn't necessarily fit all, and that every district has different levels, different budgets, and different levels of expertise in-house, and every district has different initiatives and things that they're working towards. So all of our solutions, including our managed services and our cybersecurity solution, are meant to meet a district where they are at that point and to complement your existing staff and your existing resources. One of the other things that I think is important to bring up that I think lends some credibility to our company, several years ago, we were approached by an architecture firm, and we also had seen this, you know, the 100 people that we have deployed in school districts each and every day, see that not all the facilities aren't always designed to be the most conducive to education. So we partnered with an architecture firm, and since then we've been involved heavily in the technology design for about 25 different facilities that have gone up across the state of Ohio. So again, like I said, we feel like it lends a lot of credibility to our team. And we also have a curriculum and technology integration team because we also saw many years ago that if you had technology for the sake of technology, what was the point at that point? We needed to be ensuring that we were improving education outcomes through technology. So at this point, that department's grown to about 12 teachers that are on staff, work full-time for us. They're all folks who hold teaching licenses. They have classroom experience, you know, from a couple of years to many, many years in the classroom. And they are working with educators each and every day to improve outcomes in the classroom, often through the integration of technology at that point.
Great. I think it's a really good point to start framing what the actual threat is specific to the K-12 sector. And this graph does a really good, offers a really good illustration of when this started. So if you look at this particular graph, it goes from March to August of 2020. And the bottom line represents organizations or enterprise, private enterprise. And the top line represents education, not necessarily K-12, but all education sector. So this represents 7.7 million reported ransom or malware attacks in the United States during this period, of which 61% targeted specifically education. And why does education account for 61% of cyber attacks? And just to update the stat, literally first quarter this year, it's averaging about 65%. So some of this may be very obvious to you, but cyber attackers view K-12 sector as underfunded and undersupported. I come from a private enterprise background and 25 years of corporate IT experience. And one of the most shocking things to me was when I came on board with Forward Edge, which is 100% K-12 focused, is how undersupported these education K-12 district IT departments are. When we were building out IT infrastructure in the corporate world, among other criteria or metrics, we use one staff member to 75 assets or devices. So you can extrapolate from there and understand really how much is being asked of these K-12 IT departments. It's really astounding what they accomplish. And now when you add the addition of being a target of cyber attackers with the expanded remote learning environment and the surface attack area exponentially expanding because of it, you can see really the stress that these IT departments are under. And that's what this solution is trying to address. And again, you know, to allude to William's earlier comment, we meet these districts where they are. So, you know, we look at every district individually to see, you know, how we can best integrate this solution into that environment respectfully. I don't know if any of you saw this, but this was the first time that the FBI had posted anything specific to the K-12 space. This was published in December of 2020. And what was most interesting about it, aside from the fact that it really did reaffirm the earlier stats from the first half of 2020, where education was only 27% of all reported malware attacks nationwide, from July to August, it actually doubled to 60%. So that just reaffirms that data in real reported cyber attacks. The other thing interesting about this report is that it identified the prevalence of malware by type. And so for this period in 2020, 39% of it came from a Mac OS environment, which we thought was really interesting about that as well. And the other thing to note is Forward Edge has been identified as a critical infrastructure organization. So we are actually qualified and have joined the FBI InfraGuard. We have advanced relationships with both their office in Cleveland, as well as their office here in Cincinnati. And we're establishing those relationships in Illinois actually this month. So why are cyber criminals what are cyber criminals looking to exploit? Well, interestingly enough, obviously you're aware that we have, districts have large cash balances and criminals are looking for financial gains. So they're looking to exploit these cash balances via ransomware and fund transfer fraud. And also they're looking to sell the sensitive data and personal identifiable information of students. And a lot of people ask me, why is a student data or synthetic identity of a student so valuable? When you look at the time frame that cyber criminal has to exploit that social security number before the student ever even applies for credit and realizes that they've been exploited. So it's just a longer time to exploit. And this information is actually very, very valuable. If you've ever gone to the dark web, and I don't know how much you know about what the dark web is, but there's the clear web where you can access information via Google search engine. And that accounts for about 3% of all of the World Wide Web data. And then there is the deep web, which is the majority of what's on the web. And that is about 95% of all web data. And that's accessible through a non-indexed browser. So basically anything that you can put a password in to get, like your TD Ameritrade or your banking, that's all the deep web. The dark web is less than 1% of the entire World Wide Web. And it is more than advanced. If you take eBay and put it on steroids, that's what it looks like. When you go into these marketplaces, you'll need a special browser. I don't recommend doing it because you can't unsee what's on there, but it is shocking. And it's anything from organs, drugs, you name it. And these are sophisticated marketplaces. They have mnemonics in 5 languages. They accept multiple cryptocurrencies. There's escrow accounts to ensure that the buyer gets the goods. You can register as a vendor and you can rate vendors. So it's very much a real marketplace. And if you ever have the occasion or want to do some research, if you Google FULZ, F-U-L-L-Z, it's a synthetic identity kit. And if you Google infant FULZ, or in the marketplaces, if you put in infant FULZ kits, that's what identifies, that's the slang for a minor's identity kit. And those go for 10 times as much as an adult identity kit. It's very real and it's very valuable data. So the next 3 slides are from an organization called K12 Cybersecurity, and it's free for all districts in the US to join. I encourage you to do so. It's really an organization that is trying to document data. So for lobbying purposes to get funding specific for K12 cybersecurity initiatives. So they posted this report just last month, and this is a 2020 data. So from phishing fraud, $2 million was the immediate amount of fund theft from a school district that had fallen victim to spear phishing campaigns. That was the median amount of theft. And they set a new record last year of $9.8 million from a single phishing fraud incident. Ransomware. Obviously, this is on the top of everyone's mind. It's in the news every day. But there was a 47% increase last year from Q1 to Q2 in terms of extortion demands from ransomware. I think what's really interesting about this is that the school closures caused by ransomware from a week or more duration increased 320% year over year. And I guess for a little levity, this is a quote from Toledo Public Schools, a board meeting where a parent of an elementary schooler stood up at the board meeting after Toledo Public Schools was hacked on the first day of school. And they said, they've got our children's information and these are the types of emails we're getting. My son was denied for a credit card. My son was denied a car loan because of his income ratio. So you can see it's on top of mind of school boards. Very interesting statistics. 75% of all data breach incidences in school districts in Q4 of last year originated from vendor network access. And when you do a deep dive into this white paper, it is not just ed tech vendors, but do you want to highlight a little bit?
Yeah, it isn't just ed tech vendors, it's all types of vendors. And in fact, a lot of times it's your HVAC vendor, it's your food service vendor, it's other support vendors that are interacting with your district or interacting with your network at that point. At the beginning of the webinar, I mentioned the district that we had that got hit with the ransomware. That was because they had tried to make it easy for a vendor to get in and work on their SQL database and do some things that were legitimate activities. Unfortunately, because of the way in which that was done several years ago, before cybersecurity was kind of top of mind like it is today, that ended up being a hole through which an attacker could come. We see this all the time. I can't tell you how many times I used to see requests from HVAC vendors, hey, we need this type of access to your network. Well, those types of things can't necessarily be allowed anymore. They can't be allowed unchecked anymore. There needs to be certain checks and balances in there, whether it be a multi-factor authentication, whether it be, allowed IPs, whether it be, potentially setting them up another desktop, or even rethinking who you're evaluating as a vendor. There's a number of different ways to address this, and it's not a one-size-fits-all solution by school district, but it's a real problem that needs to be addressed in the industry.
Next, there's a real, paucity of real reporting data. I was at a symposium in March where the head of data for the Department of Education for Arkansas was pleading with all the district attendees saying, report any incidents to the FBI. We really need more data. And what he disclosed was a shocking number. He said 25% of all Arkansas districts had a data exfiltration event. So again, we're always looking for data. We're data hungry just to be able to support initiatives through, hopefully future E-rate funding, et cetera. So reporting is really important. But in the absence of that, we here try to find as much data as we can, hard data. So we looked to the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. This is their Q1, Q2 2020 data. They haven't published anything since. But so this particular slide represents real claims from actual entities that held cyber policy. So this is claim data. So the most common types of cyber threats, 41%, you're probably very aware of that, 54% originating from email phishing campaigns, 47% increase in the severity of ransomware attacks. But this was really interesting. 45% of cases had no recovery of funds. So we just found that pretty horrifying. Since we're talking to Illinois districts, I thought I would highlight the Rockford Public Schools breach. I'm sure you're probably well aware of it. The CIO is really a big zealot now for cybersecurity initiatives in Illinois. He speaks regularly about it. So you're probably all aware of this, but just to highlight, 29,000 student district, 42 schools districts opened with a cyber attack. They were down for months. They were down for, they were down for about a month before systems were fully operational. He even went on to say that some of their backups were encrypted. He actually is now as a proponent of actual tape backups because he's so paranoid. So they lost control of 85 of their 400 servers across their entire network. And within weeks, the school board approved $544,000 in IT and security expenses, and additional $376,000 a little bit later for some forensics costs and some credit monitoring costs. So you can see how costly these are. Just today, I read an article about Baltimore City schools. They were breached last November, and the cost disclosed, the newspaper just finally delved into the Public Information Act and found out that that particular breach cost $8.1 million from start to finish. Pretty shocking numbers. SOPPA, Illinois. I know this is probably what's driving a lot of concern. I know you guys all have to be compliant by July 1st. We're very familiar with data privacy laws, both at the federal level. There's FERPA, COPPA, all those have data privacy implications. And as good stewards of the data, I know you're probably already compliant with those federal regulations. Here in Ohio, we have a very similar law, the Ohio Data Privacy Act. It almost mirrors SOPPA. And Ohio, like Illinois, has taken a approach where instead of being a punitive approach, they've offered safe harbor for anyone that comes in compliance with reasonable conformance. And our law in Ohio has actually identified what reasonable compliance looks like in terms of compliance with the NIST or the SIST. And for those of you who are unaware of what those are cybersecurity frameworks, nationally or internationally recognized cybersecurity frameworks that tech companies build to, that regulators, legislators use to identify what reasonable conformance looks like. SOPPA doesn't exactly name those two cybersecurity frameworks, but the ITC does. So I know some of you are probably already familiar with this. It's widely circulated in Illinois. The ITC Illinois via the Learning Center has identified 43 reasonable security best practices. And what they've done is they've taken those security practices and mapped them to the CIST. So again, that's the cybersecurity framework. It's the Center for Internet Security, Cybersecurity Controls. And our entire solution is built around these controls. And so what we've done is we've created we've extrapolated from those 43 frameworks or 43 reasonable security practices that the ITC Illinois has identified and mapped them to our solution. And as you can see, just a graphical representation will make this available afterward, but we check every single box and then some. So it gives you assurances that if you go with us, your solution is completely compliant. That said, just to recap, what are cybersecurity goals for the K12 space? Obviously, we want to prevent and remediate fiscal loss from ransomware and fund transfer fraud. We certainly want to protect sensitive data exfiltration. And most importantly, we want to prevent the disruption of operations and instruction. And the other thing that's really driving a lot of people to our solution, it's not coming from IT directors. It's coming from superintendents that are very sensitive to compliance with these data privacy laws. And as well, the treasurers now are keenly interested in the solution, only in as much as now they're having issues getting cyber coverage, because now these policies are a lot more sensitive to understanding what these districts' technology environment looks like. So they're looking for, backups, user awareness training, everything else. So when you fill out these insurance applications for coverage, for cyber coverage, they're going to ask you a lot of questions. And if you're with Forward Edge, you're able to check every single box. So our solution, we've designed it into 3 categories for presentation purposes: protection, detection, and response. So the first step that we do is a cybersecurity assessment. This is our way of analyzing what your district's environment looks like. You want to talk a little bit about this, right?
Sure. So yeah, the cybersecurity assessment, the goal is to establish a baseline at that point to understand what we feel like your cybersecurity risk is. So it starts, one of the key pieces is the proctored assessment that covers 18 different risk categories at that point. And this is where we'll lead you through. We've got a number of questions that pertain to the superintendent and the treasurer because they're more policy questions, insurance related questions, financial controls related questions at that point. And then we go into a number of technical questions about your firewall, your antivirus, endpoint policies that you may or may not have in place, what sort of training you do, maybe physical security from a closet standpoint, some authentication practices and things like that. So we've adapted these questions from the frameworks that Denise and I have mentioned throughout the course of this webinar, and really tailored them to what we think are the most relevant to the K-12 space at that point. So that's a huge piece of it.
Great. So that's the proctored assessment piece. And then we also do a dark web scan. So we run this scan against your district's domain, and we show you every single password that's been compromised on the dark web. As well, we do a phishing campaign. You give us a CSV file of all your staff email, and we run a phishing campaign and report to you the results. We also install a vulnerability scanner, and we run this to determine any out-of-date hardware or software patches needed. And then we meet with you and report to you all these results and give you your cybersecurity score. Mm-hmm. So that's just the preliminary assessment. And from that assessment, we're able to determine what your network environment looks like, the topography of it, and offer you a complete pricing for the solution itself. So now we're going to get into a discussion of what the actual solution looks like. Again, we've divided into protection, detection, and response. You want to start with the...
For sure. We've divided into protection, detection, and response because much like any security strategy, it needs to be a multi-layer approach. So, first we're going to try to keep people out. In the physical security world, that's fences, that's locked doors, things like that. So we're going to try to protect, and there's a number of different ways that we protect. One of which is through user education and making sure that people know how to identify problems and not click on things they shouldn't be clicking on, not exfiltrate sensitive data, whether that be their username and password or other people's usernames and passwords, things like that. Our awareness training program consists of not only phishing campaigns and some of that type of stuff, but we also have a monthly package where we're presenting videos, we're presenting articles, we're presenting posters, different types of things to try to engage folks at all levels of your organization in helping to improve your cybersecurity hygiene as a district. So some of it is more administrator focused, and some of it is very teacher focused, very end user type focus at that point. In addition, our protection strategy includes we take care of a number of things such as password policies and MFA. We will help to evaluate what your passwords are. We'll potentially implement multi-factor authentication on various services within your district. And then that ties hand in hand with policies. We don't take a one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to how we protect your district at that point. Speaking back to the vendor access that we started with, we're going to look at different ways that people enter and exit your network, whether it be inside the network, whether it be from outside coming into your network. And we try to understand what are the needs of those, how do we address, making sure that people can stay productive, that people can get to the information that they need, but also, what makes sense from a hole in your network. Maybe the answer is to do multi-factor authentication, but maybe the answer is, well, we don't really need that hole anymore at all. Let's send people through another means to get into our network. So we really help to coach and educate the district through a number of different policy discussions on, whether it be banking, whether it be technical, whether it be educational, to try to create a more secure infrastructure. In addition to that, we have a number of different tools that we use. You see EDR, next generation antivirus. This goes beyond the McAfee's and the Symantec's that we've used for a number of years at that point, and really brings in AI components to understand what the system should be doing and detect suspicious activity at that point. And then we also have to make sure that we're continuing to improve the strategy. So like I said, we started with the assessment, the proctored assessment, the vulnerability assessment, things like that. We continue to assess, and we do another full assessment at the end of the year to understand how we've improved your overall cybersecurity posture as it relates to not only the questions that we asked, in the first year at the onset, but also as the trends and the cybersecurity landscape has evolved. This is something that's constantly changing, and we must adapt to it.
Right. And if I could, I wanted to highlight a little bit more about the EDR next generation antivirus. So as William alluded to, this is a artificial intelligence, machine learning, live next generation endpoint detection and response, replacing all the legacy signature-based antivirus. And if you're not aware, signature-based antivirus is what's probably in about 90% of school districts nationwide. And really what that is, it's all the traditional antivirus that just looks for malware against a known database. Well, all the new threats are coming, they're new, they're not necessarily in this database. So this next generation EDR is designed to identify newer threats. And we use a product called SentinelOne. Oops, here we go. Let's see if I can find the slide. Anyway, so we use a product called Next Generation. It's called SentinelOne. And if you're not familiar with this product, it's pretty exciting. So this is our endpoint and detection and response solution. And we install this on all your critical workstations in the superintendent's suite, the treasurer suite, anywhere sensitive data resides. And SentinelOne has just won the Gartner 2021 Magic Quadrant Award just in March of this year. And basically that means that of all the enterprise class EDR technologies evaluated, it scored in the top 3 with Microsoft, CrowdStrike, all of them. So, and the most exciting award they won was the MITRE Ingenuity Award. And if you're not familiar with the MITRE Corporation, it is the artificial intelligence arm of the federal government. So it might be a corporation, but it's fully funded by the federal government. Their corporate headquarters are located within a mile of the CIA headquarters at Langley. And so what they've designed is the MITRE ATT&CK framework, which a lot of all the new artificial intelligence technologies designed to identify malware. It all is based on the MITRE ATT&CK framework that the MITRE Corporation open sourced in late 2015. So for them to win this award this year, just 2 months ago, it's a big deal because it's the only one that they evaluated out of 29 EDR companies that were all enterprise class. It's what the banks use, it's what the airlines use. Of all of those, SentinelOne was the only one that had 0 missed detections across both the Linux-based or Mac-based operating systems and Microsoft. So it's kind of a big deal. And then just for fun, SentinelOne's kind of a funny company. You know about the dark side or the Colonial Pipeline attack, May 7th. So on May 7th, the attack happened. The dark side malware was identified as the source. And on May 10th, 3 days later, SentinelOne posted a video on YouTube. You can go look at it. It's kind of funny. And it shows the console. So there's a cursor moving over toward the executable file where the dark side ransomware reside. Clicked on it, and then in milliseconds, identified, detected, responded, I'm quarantined. So within milliseconds, it addressed just the ransomware. And the other thing, I can't talk enough about this product, is that, you know, CNBC names the top 50 disruptors every year. SentinelOne was named to this, and it was named the top 5. And only because with the SolarWinds debacle that we all know about, of all the companies affected by that SolarWinds malware attack, the only ones that were unaffected were the ones running SentinelOne. So it's kind of interesting. And then just back to the point about, you know, school districts, you know, they may even have the technical acumen and the technical expertise. They may not have the bandwidth and the IT staff to support certain tools. So I was doing a presentation about a month ago for a very affluent school district outside of Columbus. And the IT director got very excited when he heard about SentinelOne. And he said, hey, we've deployed SentinelOne. And I was like, oh, that's great. You know, and he said, yeah, he said, I said, what'd you do? He said, we just plugged it in and played. Well, when we go look at the threat analytics for our SentinelOne across all our districts, we're running 36% of the detections are coming from the agent rather than the default settings of the actual software company. So what that means is that we're able to go into each environment, as William said, and we look at that environment and we tweak those settings specific to the age of their hardware or what have you. So we have that kind of expertise. Okay, so next slide, detection. You want to talk a little about
So yeah, you know, again, going back to the tiers, you know, we protect on the protection side to try to keep things out, but inevitably there will be situations where something will get in some form or fashion. So we have a number of tools that we deploy to try to understand what's going on and make sure that we can react appropriately. And one of the key pieces of that is the SIM, which is the Security Information Event Manager. And what the SIM really does is it collects data from various sources within the network, whether it be logs off of switches, logs off of a firewall, whether it be event logs coming out of the servers, various places within your network. We deploy these detectors and they feed data back into the SIM. And the SIM is able to correlate all this data and understand whether or not something is going on and whether or not maybe it's a problem or not. And in fact, we had a situation with one of our private clients here just 2 weeks ago, one of our private education institutions, I should have said, just a few weeks ago, where they had done an upgrade on some financial software within their system. And all of a sudden, on a Saturday afternoon, we got an alert that there had been 7 failed login attacks against one of their systems. So we responded as if it was a cybersecurity incident because, you know, obviously 7 failed logins against the financial system is not the kind of thing that you want to take lightly when there's potentially millions of dollars at stake at that point. We used our SentinelOne tool to quarantine the PC off of the network and try to understand what was going on. Basically, within a couple of minutes, we were able to understand that the issue was not a malicious attack. It was misconfigured software. Apparently on Friday afternoon, somebody had attempted to do an upgrade on the financial software and it didn't go quite right. And the software within itself was trying to make these failed authentications. And then we were able to understand what was going on and put the PC back on the network. But we were able to do all of this remotely, understand that it was not a cybersecurity incident, and get things back up and running with the tools that we had, with the knowledge and the expertise of our team here at Forward Edge, and also our security partner. So you'll see at the bottom left, we also say 24/7 eyes on glass. You know, even though we feel very strongly about the folks that we have on staff and the training and the experience that those folks have, we know that we are not enough to combat the cybersecurity threats that are out there and that are constantly evolving in the world. So we have partnered with a company called Continuum. They do security monitoring and cybersecurity analysis for many, many companies across the nation, including, you know, very large companies at that point. And they have very high-end cybersecurity experts with far more expertise than we could ever afford to bring to the table, constantly looking at what's going on, constantly making sure that what we're seeing is the same thing they're seeing, and that we're all acting in the appropriate manner to take action at that point. So.
Right, and also for all the Sentinel-1 alerts from the EDR that we were talking about earlier, all those alerts as well roll up under that 24/7 SOC, or the 24/7 eyes on glass, the security operations centers that is manned by trained security engineers 24/7. So that gives you a lot of peace of mind, because you know these attacks happen at Friday night or over a weekend. So it's really an added layer an added layer of security that really brings our solution to the next level. And that's how the banks configure their monitoring. That's how, you know, the airlines, large municipalities. This is an enterprise class solution. We talked about the dark web monitoring earlier. So that's part of our overall solution that will be run continuously, and you'll be reported in real time any passwords that have been compromised against your district's domain. Again, that vulnerability scan, we run that continually. We install it at inception during the onboarding process, and that is run, I guess you know what Patch Tuesday is. So the second Tuesday of every single month, you know, that's when all the software companies push out their latest patches. Patching is critical for security. And so we run this vulnerability scan every month, the weekend after Patch Tuesday. And then we alert you and say, hey, you missed this patch, or this is outstanding. And so it's really a good cadence and a constant rhythm in terms of monitoring. And again, the alert monitoring and reporting, you will have full access to all the consoles for these products. So you can, during the onboarding process, we can design the frequency, how you want to look at it, how you want it pushed out to you. All of that is customized per district. So is that everything, right? Anything else? Okay. Response. So in the horrible event of that something goes wrong, you need to be prepared. So we work with each district to develop a very robust, comprehensive incident response plan. So we work with understanding what your cyber insurance policy looks like, what those first steps are that are supported by that policy. Very often, you know, these policies will have, you know, legal counsel, PR, all those things. So we work with you to understand what that is when we're putting together the incident response plan. We also know that one of the first calls needs to be to a legal counsel. So from that point on, anything you do, any actions taken to remediate falls under privilege. So you can control the narrative from a PR perspective. So we understand all these aspects of it. And again, earlier I referred to that we are members of the FBI InfraGard. We have those relations set up, and that'll be part of your incident response plan, as well as calls to the local authorities. Ransomware rollback. This is actually a function of the Sentinel-1 product, again, and it leverages the VSS shadow copy. So we can restore that asset or that device to pre-breach status, and within 4 hours of that breach to pre-breach status. So that's a great tool for the superintendents and treasurers and servers where that's installed. Again, we do the remediation and forensics. So we will, with complete transparency, provide any kind of reporting we can to assist in the forensics, and as well help you file your claims with the insurer. And we act as a third-party liaison. We want to be on your team during a response to help facilitate getting you back up and running as fast as possible. Good news. So I don't know if you know this, but finally some good news. ESSER 2 funding has been approved for cybersecurity initiatives. So you can scan this QRC code, QR code, and it'll show you how we approach this from an application perspective, and as well you can contact our offices and we'll help you with that as well. Those are the SOPPA guidelines, and then again, if you want to schedule a meeting with us directly, feel free to scan the QRC and you'll get in touch with us right away. So any questions? Let's see, I think we have some in the chat. How much does the initial assessment cost and the overall managed solution ongoing?
Sure. So the initial assessment is about $4,500, $4,000. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's right in that area. And that really takes you through, like I said, it's the proctored assessment, it's all the reporting, it's an initial vulnerability scan, it's an initial report of your amount of dark web entries basically that are out there, which can be very enlightening to see what passwords people may still be using that are out for sale on the dark web. So that's really the initial step to establish a baseline at that point.
And can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
For Gallagher, we have a promotion running. So the initial assessment, if your district is under 8,000 students, it is $3,500, and we're offering a special promotion of $500 off. So I believe that's right. Is that right? Yeah. And then if it's 8,000 more students, it's $4,500 and I think that runs through August 1st.
Yep.
Okay. What does onboarding look like? Our district has implemented controls already. Do you offer a partial to appointment or a la carte? You want to take the onboarding and the?
Sure. So yeah, the onboarding, we've got a process that we take you through at that point. First off, we start off with a meeting to kind of help everybody understand exactly what the process is and kind of understand what the time frames are. There'll be some things that we need from you. There'll be some things that we need you to do. There'll be some things that we have to do to get things set up. But really, we want to understand what your schedule is, what kind of time frame you want to be on for all of the different pieces to take effect. But we can really get from start to finish of the onboarding in as little as 14 to 21 days at that point. So it's something that we've done a number of times. We can work with your team, whether you're deploying endpoints or we have services that we can add on if you want assistance deploying endpoints. There's a number of ways we can go about that.
Okay. Our district has implemented some controls already. Do you offer partial deployment or an a la carte approach?
Absolutely. I think we've made it clear throughout the course of this cybersecurity presentation that it's important to not look at a cybersecurity solution as a single product. Denise mentioned a lot about the SentinelOne product, which we think is a great product, but there is not a product necessarily that makes you, that puts you in a good position from a cybersecurity perspective. They can help, but it's not a one size fits all, or there's no golden ticket at that point. So we can work with you to understand what maybe you've done, whether it be a firewall that's provided, whether it's something that you have in-house, whether it's something that's upstream at the ITC. I know a number of school districts have already bid off on some form of user training, whether that's KnowBe4, whether that's WebRoot, whatever the case may be. We can work with you on that within that framework. And really, much like our partner managed services, our partner cybersecurity services wants to meet you where you are and get the right solution in place so that we can have a fully layered cybersecurity strategy to improve the health of your district at that point, from policies to the technical aspects and all the different things that come into play there.
Great. How much visibility is available into the console? Oh, the Security Operations Center console. I think we kind of addressed that earlier, but during the onboarding process, we will show you what the entire range of reporting is, the frequency, and you can design it and have access to those consoles. You'll have everything but admin access, literally. From what we see, you can see. So I think that's it. Any more questions? All right. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And again, we are available for a deeper technology dive if you're interested in that, or we're happy to meet with you one-on-one and talk about your district specifics and how we can help. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.